All right, Heifer. All right, so starting in Aleph, okay, the Sikha is talking about it's talking about Noach and Avram Avinu, but it's from Pirkei Avos. So it's a Sikha on Pirkei Avos as it discusses kind of the difference between the generations of Avram Avinu and the generations of Noach and how, like, what they were able to do, right? So it says a state in Mishnah. It says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, it says a Sara Derjes min Noach v'yad Avram, that 10 generations came from Noach to Avram Avinu, l'hidia kama erech apayim, to teach us how patient Hashem is with His anger, right? It says lefanav shekola derjes hayu machisin ubayin ad sheba Avraham Avinu v'kibul schar kulam, that the 10 generations, they came and they angered Hashem, right, until Avram Avinu came and he was able to receive the reward from them, right, for them, basically their reward. So es ist darf man verstehen, wie bald der Asar Dörres seinen Gewinn Machisin Ubayin, wie es wird gesagt in the Mishnah Gufa, says this 10 generations that came before Avram Avinu, that came and they angered Hashem, right? As it says in the Mishnah itself, Ta vos faraschar hat ze gekumt vos Avraham hat es bakumen. What reward could they possibly have had if they angered Hashem? What does this mean, right? What could this possibly mean? The reward that Avram Avinu was able to get from those generations if they angered Hashem. Good question, right? This is Nachmer. Furthermore, Freer Zog the Mishnah. It says previously in this Mishnah, it says, Asar Deris me Adam va'ad Noach lahidia kama erech apayim. Same language, right? That 10 generations came from Adam to Noach, from Adam Arishon to Noach, to teach us how patient Hashem is with His anger. Lefanav shekol haderis hayu machisin ubayin ad shehevi aleim esmei amabu. That's where the difference is, right? So instead of and then Noach, or instead of then the tzaddik, then Avram Avinu was able to receive their reward by Noach, the 10 generations leading up to Noach. Instead, it says, so then Hashem brought on the flood, right? Nitzu gebindik as Noach kibul schar kula. It doesn't add that Noach was able to receive their reward like it did with Avram Avinu. You following so far? You see the question, the build up here? So this is verstandig in Pashtus. There's a simple way to understand this. It says, Vibad, since hayu machisin ubayin, haben ze b'meile kein schar nit verdient. You could say, since they angered Hashem, they didn't have schar, they didn't have reward. There was no reward for Noach to get. But late them, according to this though, wird noch mehr nit verstandig. It doesn't quite make sense, right? For vos by dia Deris Menech v'ad Avram, then how come by the 10 generations leading up to Avram Avinu, it says welche seinen eich gewinn machisin ubayin. Also over there, it says that those 10 generations angered Hashem. The viert eis de Mishnah as Avram kibul schar kulam. How come Avram Avinu was able to receive schar? It literally uses the same language. It says that these 10 generations came and they angered Hashem, but by the generations leading up to Noach, mabul, right? But leading up to Avram Avram Avinu was able to get the reward from them. So Farim Mefarshim, there's commentaries on this. It says it brings the Rabbeinu Yonah and Bartanura on the Mishnah, right? This is was farentferen. They answer that as jeder Mensch hat a fareis bestimmten Chelek in Gan Eden. It says that every person has a designated part of Gan Eden, right? And it says nar oiber is nischayev, if they're chayev, meaning if they don't earn it, they don't deserve it, then avos damot nemt their chelka b'gehenim, then they don't get it in the Gan Eden. They don't get their portion in Gan Eden. They get it in Gehenim. Lo aleinu. So dan kommt that tzviter was is zacha, but then a person comes who is worthy of Gan Eden, right? They get their piece of Gan Eden, and they get the piece of Gan Eden from the person that forfeited their piece, right? So lefizeh, according to this, we have a difficulty with the first part of the Mishnah, because asar daris me Adam ve'ad Noach the 10 generations from Adam Arishon till Noach, wie bald sie seinen Eich gewen machisen ubayin, that since they came and they angered Hashem, and Noach is given tzaddik b'deiros of, it says that Noach was the tzaddik of his generation. Just like Avram Avinu was the tzaddik, it says Noach was the tzaddik. So hat doch Noach gedarf nemen chelke v'chelech havero von der asara deiros began Eden. So how come Noach didn't get the schar from those generations, right? Avram Avinu was a tzaddik, so he got the schar, the reward from the previous generations. Then how come Noach, who it says about Noach that he was the tzaddik of his generation, so how come he didn't get the reward? Okay, Beis. You see where I'm at? Cool. Beis, Mefarshim Zainin is Masber. The commentaries explain that Hayes is Noach Hutnit Mispala Gaven Alanshe Dere. We know that Noach didn't daven, right? This is the popular explanation, the difference between Noach and Avram Avinu. It says that Noach didn't daven for his generation, right? It says hat sich nicht abgegeben mit Mekarev sein Dimension von sein Dor zum Ebersten. Und Poel sein, sie sollen sich führen Kediboy. He didn't, endeavor to bring the people around him, the people of his generation, closer to Hashem. Not only didn't he daven for them, but he also didn't go out and ask people to put on tefillin, right? You know what I mean? He just was building the teva for 120 years, and so that everybody would come and ask him, what is he doing? Then he would tell them, and hopefully that would inspire tshuva. But he wasn't out there. He wasn't out there in the streets trying to make people, come back to Hashem. So der Riber is ein Zacha nit gewen genug grace as soll nehmen schar kulam. So apparently this was not enough to merit the reward of the other people's piece of Gan Eden, according to this explanation, right? Makes sense? So Masha Enkin Avraham. By Avraham, however, it says was hat mefarsim given a lekusa ba'elam. It says that we all know, Avram Avinu's whole thing was spreading the knowledge of Hashem. It says, Vayikra Sham b'shem Hashem kel olam, right? So it says, Vayikra Sham, he called the name in the name of Hashem, the God of the world, right? And there's all kinds of Chassidus that explains this pasuk a little differently. In fact, it brings an al tikri, right? An al tikri is when it says that the pasuk says this and the word is like this, but if you were to just pronounce it differently, instead of saying it like this, you'd say it like this. So instead of vayikra, you say vayakri, and it says vayakri instead of vayikra, he called the name of Hashem. Vayakri, he caused others to call in the name of Hashem, right? And what's the story? The situation was he had people, Bedouins and all these different people were out, and he would have them come to his tent, and he would take care of them. He would rinse their feet. He'd give them food. And at the end, when it was time to, pay the bill, he would say, just say grace after meal, just bench, right? And if it was, I got my own thing I'm into, no thank you, and da-da-da, he'd be like, okay, so then I'll give you the tab. And the tab would be an exuberant amount of money. It's like, where else are you going to get, the food? Like, where else are you going to get ribeye out here, right? So that then it was shit, right? Then they were ready to bench at that point, right? So that's Avram Avinu's whole thing was getting people to understand what Hashem was, to appreciate Hashem, and to just say to bench, So this is unhat mekarev given mentioned some Eberstein. His whole thing was bringing people closer to Hashem. Vi chazal zagan in pasuk ve'es hanefesh asher asu b'charon. Right, Chazal say on the pasuk, the souls that he created in Charon, it means the people the Baal Tshuvas he got, right, the people he brought to Hashem. So obviously he received the reward for his generation because he was putting in the work. He got people to come close to Hashem. He got them to be worthy of reward, so he got to reap the benefits of that reward. This is not to say that was why, but that's a whole nother thing. So it's bleibt aber. You see where I'm at in the next paragraph? So it's bleibt aber noch als nicht moving. Right? There still remains a question we have to clarify. Annemendig als euch die Asar Deure Shema Adam ve Adnoach haben great a bestimmten schar, right? So if we were to say that the 10 generations from Adam to Noach also had their designated schar, Vakol Adam Yesh Lechelik Began Eden, because everybody has their piece of Gan Eden, right? So then, unvibal is Noach hat zeir schar nit bekommen, weil ihm hat gefällt der Schus Eifen, der Schus der Reif, rather. Heint wer hat genommen zeir chelik in Gan Eden. It said, if it didn't say that Noach got the schar, and everybody has a share in Gan Eden, then where'd the schar go? Who got the reward? It would have mentioned it. It would have said where it went. Okay, Noach didn't get it. Where'd it go? Avinu, we saw he got to collect. So so we can't say as keiner hat das Taka nit bekommen. Warum auf Gan Eden steht? We can't say that it just didn't go anywhere, because it says about Gan Eden, Vainachehu beGan Eden la'avdo l'shamra, that it says that Adam HaRishon was placed in Gan Eden to work it and to keep the garden. Und la'acher chet etzadas is the Gan Eden der Art von Kabbalas Schar for dem la'avda elo ramach mitzvasase. So then, after the sin of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, then the Gan Eden went from a place where you do the work in Gan Eden to a place where you receive the reward for the work that you do, which Avda goes on the positive mitzvahs, right? In Unlu Shamra, and to keep or to guard Elu Shasa mitzvahs Leisa goes on the prohibitive mitzvahs, right? The mitzvahs Leisa, negative commandments, in Olam Hazeh, in this world. So now it's still of the Shamra. You're still doing the work and keeping, but you're doing it here in this world. And then the Gan Eden is where you get the reward after the work. So Gan Eden is bestimmt for them other mit der Tachlis and Sil. So that's what people got, a purpose, and they do this work, then they get the reward over there. So kendach nit gemalt seinen Art in Gan Eden soll bleiben ledig. So we can't say that if Gan Eden was supposed to be taken care of, Gan Eden, they're supposed to go and do the work and keep it. And so now we do it here, and then you get to your piece of Gan Eden. Then you can't say that there's a piece of Gan Eden that's just left empty, right? Noach didn't get the schar. Where to go? Didn't mention it. You can't say that. You can't say it just nobody's over there taking care of their Gan Eden. And it would have mentioned it if it went somewhere. So ubefrat an Ort, was es keilo chalakim von alle Menschen von Zinderes und gar lange Deres. Not only just a single person is missing, the single person's piece of Gan Eden is not being accounted for. We're talking about 10 generations. And the 10 generations we're talking about from Adam to Noach, man, they were living like hundreds of years, right? That's a lot of Gan Eden not being accounted for. So Emetz muss dort kommen und erfüllen dem Tachlis von Gan Eden. Something had to be done with this piece of Gan Eden, for these 10 generations that everybody's living hundreds of years. That had to be accounted. It has to be accounted for. So Muzmen der Riber sagen. You see, I'm at the next paragraph. So we have to say, therefore, as der Sarah Dörres mi Adam ad Noach haben melechatchila nit gehat kein Shum zugetelten Chelek schar. We have to assume that the generations from Adam to Noach, they just didn't, from the onset, they just never had a piece of Gan Eden. We have to say that we have to surmise from this that they just didn't have an allotted piece of Gan Eden. Otherwise, it would have been accounted for. So medarf aber verstehen. Therefore, we have to understand that mit was seinen sie mit sehr machisin gewen anderes und ärger von der zweite Asher Deres. What was so different about the language in the Mishnahs were the same, right? 10 generations from Adam to Noach came, they angered Hashem. 10 generations from Noach to Avram came, they angered Hashem. What was so different about the first situation than the second 10 generations? That they just didn't get a piece of Gan Eden. So euch is nicht verstandig. Because also, we have to clarify, that was is bechlad the chiddush von der Mishnah as der Eibishter is an erech apayim. What's the chiddush? What's the novel idea the Mishnah is like? What's this revelation the Mishnah is giving us by saying that Hashem is the erech apayim? He's patient. This is dacha beferish pasuk. We have this pasuk. We already know this. It says Hashem kel erech apayim. Und das meint wie Rashi bringt arab the tzaddikim oder rishayim. If you want to say that, oh, that's just Hashem's patient with tzaddikim. So Rashi explains, no, that's tzaddikim and rishayim. Hashem in general, he's patient with us. Baruch Hashem. This is bepashtus kumt eis. As the chiddush von der Mishnah is kama erech apayim. So the Mishnah, the chiddush that the Mishnah is giving us in terms of Hashem's patience is how patient, right? The duration of that patience. But it says, in Pasuk wird nit der Mond bis wiffel es zit sich dem Eberstens erech apayim. It doesn't say how long he's patient. It just says that he's patient in the Pasuk. Der Riber sagt the Mishnah lahidea kama. So therefore the Mishnah is coming along to teach us how patient he is, how long that patience is. As the Eibishter is Meirich af bis afilu asara deiros. He extends his patience, right? He's very patient. He's patient 10 generations, right? It gives us a little parameter here by telling us about these two sets of 10 generations, that it was 10 generations Mabul. Then another 10 generations Avram Avinu. Different outcome, but still the patience seems to stop at the 10 generations, right? So man darf aber verstehen, was ist Tage der Hasbara davon, was der Eibishter is meirich af bis afilu asara deiros. So what's being emphasized here by saying that Hashem is patient for 10 generations, and why specifically 10? What's with 10, right? What's that gasha von asara deiros davka? Why 10 generations? Wird man das als verstehen durch mevares und noch an Indien. So we can understand this by explaining another concept. The Seder Mishnayos is doch ausgestellt bediuk. The Seder of Mishnayos, right? The Mishnah was all set up. Yehuda Anasi, it was not random. He knew exactly what goes where and how, right? We have to assume that. Ubefrat is demselben Perek. So how much more so specifically when it comes to one chapter. One chapter for sure is not random. So wie bald das sei, was ist der Scheiches von der Mishnah von Asara Deiros mit Adam zu der Friedike Mishnah bei Asara Maimaris Nivra Eilam. So what's the connection between our Mishnah that we're talking about here about the 10 generations, the two sets of 10 generations, with the Mishnah right before it that talks about the 10 utterances that created the world, right? Hashem said, and there it was, 10 times. The 10 utterances that created the world. So, oy blois to lib seder and yonim in zman. If we were to say that it's just talking about chronological order, then was der asara deiros mit Adam ad Noach haben sich angeheben gleich nach Nivra Eilam. Hat der Tana gedarf magdim sein, der späte dicke Mishnah, asara dvarim Nivra be Erev Shabbos ben Hashmashos. If it was just chronological, then it would have gone from the Asara Maimaris, the 10 utterances that created the world, to a Mishnah that comes much later that discusses the 10 things that were created on Erev Shabbos, the first Erev Shabbos, right? The first Friday, at the end of the creation of the world, says the 10 things that were made. That should have come after the 10 utterances, but it doesn't. It skips it and puts that later. So clearly it's not just put in chronological order so it happens to be next to each other. This is very specific, obviously. Because was red wegen dem Ziel von Nivra Eilam vor dem Zman von der Asara Deiros. And so we would say that this happened at the end of the creation of the world before the 10 generations, the two sets of 10 generations. So is there beer in them? So the explanation on this In the Friedike Mishnah wird gesagt, as ba'asara my mother's nivra ha'olam. In the previous Mishnah where it says, in the 10 utterances, the world was created. Und as das lernt uns zweiendicken Indien, we learn a second idea. That the Rishayim, the wicked people, came along trying to destroy the world. And that the tzaddikim, the righteous, received reward for trying to sustain the world. Right? That's what it says in Pirkei Avos, in this Mishnah. So, behemshech ubehesem zu de zwei Lernungen bekesher zu de zwei Suge b'nei Adam. So, in connection and in continuation of this idea, as it pertains to the two types of people that we're talking about, right? The first la'apara min harishayim shema abdin, the wicked people that want to destroy the world, v'litein schar toiv tzadikim shemekayim, and the righteous people who receive reward for just trying to sustain the world and maintain it. So learnt the zweite Mishnah in the selbe zwei inyanim. So the second Mishnah is teaching something on the same two ideas. Okay? It's using the same ideas. Aleph, Asar Deiros me Adam v'yad Noach, the 10 generations from Adam until Noach, was the Asar Deiros seinen gewinn Rishayim was haben ma'abed gewinn dem Eilam. They wicked people that came and they wanted to destroy the world. Der Riber hat der Eibishter ze ma'anish gewinn la'apora shehevi aleim es me'amabu. Hashem got rid of them. Okay? As it pertains to the people who were wicked and trying to destroy the world, Hashem got rid of them. In Beis, Asar Deiros Noach v'yad Avram, the 10 generations from Adam until Noach, says Ad Sheba Avram v'kibul schar kulam, that Avram Avinu came along and got the reward for them. So vos agam eich at the Asar Deiros chayu machiisen ubayin hat aber Avram Avinu mekayim gewend dem Olam. But Avram Avinu came along and he sustained the world, right? He brought people closer to Hashem. Hat gepot akiyum euchen da alle seinen Asar Deiros. He was able to give them a reason to be sustained, right? He gave them a reason to be sustained by bringing them closer to Hashem. So now they had merit. And so he was able to receive any reward because he was able to do that by bringing others closer to Hashem and bringing within them a reason to be sustained. So this is therefore is given schar kulam und hat genommen schar kulam. That's why there was schar to receive, there was reward to receive, and he got it because he put in the work. Ois hey. Says aber noch als nit musbar. We're almost there, right? So was ist für der Hefrisch zwischen die beiden Asar Deiros, was davke in die zweite hat man gekannt öftan akiyum und durch die Makabel sind schar kulam. What was different between the two generations that by the second generation there was the possibility of sustaining it. There was the possibility to sustain it, to bring out a reason to maintain this world that he was able to then receive reward for. But ultimately, what was different about these 10 generations? And there beer in them. Is there beer in them? The explanation on this. By understanding a concept as it pertains to the wars that the Jewish people went through, we can understand this. Von jeden is gewähnt Sachen, was man hat machrim, gewähnt Sachen, was man hat genommen b'shalom. There were two types of things that they would take from war, right? They'd conquer, and they would with all the objects, they could either keep them as spoils or they had to destroy them. They couldn't keep everything, right? Azay ich in der Milchemes Mitte Rabbi Sheba Eilam seinen Verein zwei Sugen bara. So when it comes to the war against bad in the world, we have to apply the same ideas. The same rules apply. There are some things that you can keep, and some things gotta go. Right? And there's different ways of dealing with each of these two things. Aleph. Sachen, was rein in ganzen Ra. Things that are completely bad, ze haben nicht in sich kein Tov. There's no good inside of them. Something that's completely bad through and through, there's no good inside. Und als solche Sachen darf man ma'abed sein. Some things you have to destroy, you can't keep. We know by kli cheres, right? By porcelain dishes, you can't kosher them, you can't put them in the, you can't tevel them. Nothing kosher them. The only way to bring purity to a porcelain dish or earthenware, a kli cheres, is by destroying it. And that's what it says. That's the halacha. Unviz is mavor in Lekutei Torah. Now, the Alter Rebbe explains in Lekutei Torah a very interesting concept in the Inyan fun Streifas Apara as it pertains to the burning of the red cow, the red heifer. As para is merames oiv de maisim rayim vos zainin be'emes ra gomer mitzad atzmai. The red heifer represents all that is bad, like completely bad in and of itself. So vos der far verbrennt men de para. So the whole cow has to be burnt. Vos der val ein lo takana el bitule v'havarasa min ha'elam. There's nothing redeemable about it, so it has to be completely removed from the world. It gets burnt. And this is es bleibt über blaze der Heifer. The only thing that's left is the ashes, the dust. Was beweist Eifen etzem koyach hamisave. And this represents the essence of the power or the attribute of desire, right? Was is nitra mitzad etzem atzmusay. The desire itself is not bad. It's only how it manifests. When it manifests into something that is completely bad, then it's problematic. Beis, the second thing, Zachen was hagam und afilu wenn begili zet sich nit in ze kein tov. Also, we don't see good. It seems like it's just bad, right? Von deswegen haben sie in sich a nitzutz tov. However, deep inside, there's a spark of good inside of it, right? So was der Far darf man sie nicht ma'avid sein. Then we don't need to destroy it. If there's some good in there, we don't destroy it, even if you can't see the good. But if there's good in it, there's no need to destroy it. So it's nor, rather, tan mit ze bis mevet adraba. Ze mekayim sein. You just have to work with it, right? You don't destroy it. If there's good in there, there's no need to destroy it. Then the only way to redeem it is you have to work with it. And by working with it, you're able to give reason to sustain it. You're able to sustain it, right? And maintain it. The language that it uses is Mekayim. Just like Avinu was able to Mekayim the world, so too, when it comes to something that has good in it, when there's some good, you're able to Mekayim it, work with it, and give it reason to be. And we're able to completely transform it from something that's bad into something that's good. This is wild. As it says in Chazal, there's a Gemara, it says, there's a story of a woman who was trying to seduce, she was trying to seduce a yid, right? And so she laid out these fine linens, these sheets. And because he restrained himself and denied her, she was so impressed by his connection, his steadfast, morals, his ideals. She was so impressed that she converted. She became a yid herself. They got married, and then she laid those same linens out for a kosher reason. Wow, right? So das ist der Heifer zwischen the beide Aseret Deiros. This is the difference between the two sets of the 10 generations. Der Raf und der Aseret Deiros from Adam ad Noach is given Ra Gomer. The 10 generations from Adam until Noach are completely bad. Und Azar Ra is Ma'abed devel. And this bad has to go. Darüber hat der Eibishter sich im Ganzen abgewischt von der Welt. He washed, the Hashem had to wash them away. He brought the Mabul, he brought the flood. However, on the other hand, the 10 generations from Noach to Avram, They also came and angered Hashem. Doch sehr gewen von Azar Sug was man hat es gekent mahapich sein l'tayv. Over here, these 10 generations had something inside of them that made it possible to transform their ra, their bad, into good. That's what Avram Avinu did, right? And it says, und therefore, b'shas Avram Avinu is gekommen und hat durch sein Aveda mikayim gewend de Welt. And Avram Avinu comes along, and through his working with the world, right? This is hat metaken und mashlin gewend the alle asar. He was able to completely repair and complete these 10 generations. And with that came the reward. So the time was the Eibishter is Meirich Af is Af Biz Asar. The reason Hashem is patient up until 10 generations. Shen Gedar Filmal, Geret Filmal. It's already, they're saying that the Rebbe's explained this concept a bit. It says, Asar, as Eser is a Ganzer und vollkommen Mispar, was is in sich Kailul alle Shleimosen. 10 is a number that represents completion, but a number that represents completion in a way that it contains all other numbers of completion, right? 1 or 7 days of creation. 8 is 7 plus, the times of Mashiach. And there's Chassidus that explains that 10 goes on the next thing because 10 has within it all the other numbers of completion. We think of a minyan, think of the 10 Sephiris, all these concepts that include 10, because 10 is the ultimate number of completion. So Punkt wie das is in Tzara Kedusha, just as this exists in the side of holiness, azay is es eich in Heifer Kedusha. The same exists in the opposite of holiness. The ganze voller Feinen von Ra is eisgestellt in the Misper von Esser von 10 Beginnes. The same exists in the side of the opposite of holiness. The number 10 represents completion, right? It's full. So there's a level of 10. And therefore is the Eibishter Meirich Af, and therefore Hashem he extends his patience, right? Vartendik Nizal Tshuvaton, because he's hoping that you'll do tshuva, right? He's patient because he's waiting for us to do tshuva. Biz asar deiris, until 10 generations. Das heißt, bis zu der Pullermos, meaning the Fullermos, the fullest extent from Machas and Ubay, until the fullest extent of the anger, of angering Hashem. In alle 10 beginners, deiris von Ra. Meaning, not just the 10 generations, but reaching the level of 10 as it pertains to bad or angering Hashem. So jeder Mensch wird doch angerufen Eilam Kotten. Now, to make this relevant to us, how we can apply this to Aveda, says that every person is a tiny world, right? Is a small world. Every person is an individual universe. So we can apply the same idea as it pertains to us as an individual. Is Punkt wie es seinen Faran zwei Tekufas von Asar Deiris in Eilam Gadol, just like these two ideas exist as it pertains to the world, our world, the real world. Azoi seinen da ot de beide Tekufas beim Eilam Kotten. The same exists as it pertains to the world that is a person, every individual. By Yachid and Avedasa Yisbarach. And each individual's service to Hashem, the way their relationship with Hashem is. When a mensch is in Meshech von ganze Tenteg, arengetot in Inyane Bilti Ritzuyim, when a person is completely engrossed in doing things they're not supposed to do, right? To the point that they reach the level of 10, they're completely wrapped in it, okay? Und von deswegen verteufle. However, things are still going good for them, okay? Kenner doch meiner als eich weiter wird sein Matzev sein wie bis jetzt. That a person might say, you know what? I've been doing my thing and things have been going all right for me, right? This is Vizbarach bilvave le'emar shalom li ki b'shriris li bi Lecha. That a person might say, you know what? I have my, Hashem understands me. He, everything's been going all right for me, even though I'm still doing what I want to do. So I go weiter, right? I'll keep going. Zog daif dem, the Mishnah. The Mishnah is talking to these people. As das, was hat gehat, haspas, hatev, bis hagam, is nit kidiboy. That a person seems like they're receiving good things. Life is good for them, even though they may not be deserving it. Is es der Far was der Eibishter is meirich af. So Hashem will prolong his patience, aber das wird nicht per werden nach der bestimmten Zman, but only for a designated amount of time. Right? Und darüber darf tun, seine Veda in an Eifen von Hevi Alehem es me'amabo. So a person has to take the bad that they do, and they have two avedas. They have two ways of dealing with it. The first is the first way of dealing with the first 10 generations. Bring the mabul, wash it away altogether. Right? In ganzem mevatel zande in yonim bilti ritzuyim. Completely get rid of the things that you're not supposed to be doing. Aber der aveda is nit maspek, but the work doesn't stop there. Warum wie bald es seinen Schein durchgegangen, ganze 10 Tag auf in yonim bilti ritzuyim. Yeah, you have to stop. Since you have to stop the bad things altogether and get rid of those things from your life, fällt doch in den Yonim Teuvim, was hat in dem vorangegangen Zman gekannt. Sorry. That you're still lacking in the positive things that you could have been doing, right? You were doing bad. You were doing things you weren't supposed to be doing. But not only is getting rid of all of that, that's not enough. It still happens to be that during that you also were missing out on the good you could have been doing. So now you have to do that part, right? You still have more to do. The person only has so many days in this world. Jeder Mensch hat a gewisse Zeit, was seinen Fall ihm bestimmten zu tun in Avodas Hashem. We only have so long to do the work. Hashem wants you to do the work, and He gives you so much time to do it. Darüber muss sich vernehmen mit der zweite Avoda. This is where the second piece of the Avoda comes, the second effort, right? It says von der zweite Asar Deiders, which goes on the second set of 10 generations. Poel sein Akiel, euch in die Friedeke Tag, durch die Avoda von Nesabche Chashucha Lenahera, that the 10 generations later, where there was some good, and we're able to mahapich it, as he uses the language here of Visabcha, to transform the darkness into light. Is mitaken und marscheln euch das, was hat verfällt in the Friedeke Tag. You're able to fix, repair, and complete the good that you were lacking from those earlier days. Bis in Eifen von V'kabels Charkulam. And this is, by doing this, you're able to receive the reward, meaning the 10 days that you missed out, that you could have been doing good. By transforming that into good, by actively doing good now, you're able to receive the reward from what you would have received from those earlier days.